The Rangers still have a top 10 starting pitching staff, and is that still not good enough?
Starting pitching staff or pitching staff overall?
Starting pitching staff.
I'd have to really break down everybody's, but I would say it's now a good question because I think they're around 10th. Now, they have a lot of stats that say they're really good, as in wins and your ERA and innings pitched per start. But right now, when you've kind of watched the last month of Rangers baseball, you have to start questioning. It's not bad. It's definitely not below average. It's going to be top 15 for sure. But can you go, all right, now let's go head-to-head with these 3 or 5 teams? I think you start having a lot of questions.
What Mike is saying, there are a lot of things. What quantifies top 10? Because ERA right now, they're 12.
And that's for all pitching, right?
Oh, okay, that is all pitching.
So starting
all right, gotcha.
pitching, they're top 5 in all major categories for starting pitching so far this year. And I guess also the question is
who's our rotation?
Do you think at the end of the year that's going to be who's the rotation?
Yeah, who's our rotation right now? Like,
I think as long as Eovaldi can pitch, he's pitching on Tuesday, so he might not pitch Friday.
Okay.
But if you're setting up the rotation because nobody's pitching Tuesday in the All-Star game, Eovaldi would pitch game 1, John Gray would pitch game 2, Dane Dunning would pitch game 3.
Interesting.
I'm going to guess Heaney would pitch game 4 and Perez would pitch game 5.
All right.
Which is fascinating because Andrew Heaney has been struggling, or especially in that last start.
Right.
He has not been great.
He did throw 5 shutout innings his last start against the Astros before that game.
Okay.
So if you want to go on just the last one, you're right. He was the worst out of the 5 guys who made their last start. But if you go off of and not Martin Perez because Bradford took that spot. And so, it'll be interesting, too, is coming back from the break. I think Boch is all about winning. And I know that Martin Perez is making $19 million. And I know that they're going to try to get him right during this break. And hopefully he has a better second half. But I will not be shocked if Bradford is getting more starts than Martin Perez in the second half of the season. Now, that's based off of no trades.
Okay, yeah.
Trades can change a lot of what we're talking about right now. But right now I have to assume you're going to pitch 2 weeks without a new starting pitcher from a trade. So it'll be interesting the first 2 times through the rotation. If Martin Perez struggles his next outing, would he just go, I'm just going to go with Cody Bradford and move Martin Perez to the pen? I don't know.
Okay, can we talk about that a little bit more? Because what has Martin Perez going out like faster than Heaney, for example? Because Martin Perez was solid in June, and Andrew Heaney was solid, ish. Look, his ERA for the month is a 6.
Right.
That is heavily pushed by that last start against Detroit. But before that, he was doing pretty okay.
So when I watched him pitch against the Houston Astros, Martin Perez, if he threw a ball that was a perfectly placed pitch, and I mean perfect. You can't throw a ball better than that. You know what Houston did? Fouled it off. Like foul ball. Great pitch, foul ball. And then he'd throw a pitch 2 inches off the plate. And there was not even a check swing. It was like, I saw it the whole time, dude. It's a ball.
That's not
What's
good.
your next pitch? All right. On the corner, fine. Foul ball. Off the plate, ball. Thank you. Like he wasn't missing by a lot. They were close misses. And then as soon as he hit the plate, and I'm not saying down the middle, as soon as all of the ball got the plate, the ball was whacked, man. Even his outs were hard outs. Adolis Garcia jumping at the wall to save a double or a triple to start the game. A rocket line drive to your infielder. You're just like, dang, he got 3 outs in that inning without giving up any runs. But, this is where, as a pitcher, you have to know. At times, you can give up 2 runs in an inning. But if they're hitting a dribbler to your third baseman, that's an infield hit. And then they hit a pop-up over your second baseman's head for a hit, and then they end up getting a fielder's choice and they score a run. And then a guy gets a jam shot, but it falls in front of the left fielder. Was that a bad inning? Well, according to the stats, Kevin, it was a bad inning. I gave up 2 runs in the inning. But I have to go back to the dugout going, hey, I'm making good pitches. I'm just not lucky right now. Those balls are finding holes. If I keep making those pitches and they keep hitting the ball 85 to 88 miles an hour off the bat, I'm going to find more outs than hits. But if I'm getting outs and they say exit velocity 103 out, ball hit 400, feet to center field, but it's caught at the wall by Leody Taveras, I have to start going to myself, I might have got 3 outs in that inning and didn't give any runs.
I'm on the edge.
Yeah.
But I'm not pitching well. So there's a difference between at times if you just let results dictate your attitude and what your outcome is. Hey, it's a results business at the major leagues, but you have to be smarter than that as a pitcher. And Martin Perez is a smart guy. I'm not saying he's not, but I think when you're Mike Maddox and you're Bruce Bochy and you come back from your mini vacation and you really have a discussion about this, Andrew Heaney is getting more swings and misses. And now there's also the innings pitched issue with Andrew Heaney that maybe he's a more effective reliever than Martin Perez is. And so it's going to be interesting this second half how Bruce Bochy attacks with this rotation.
I think the confident takes are the thing that like really concerns me the most, because that tells me that they have something on their scouting report that says we only have to look for this. And once we see this, we can do this well. Once we force him to start going to this specific pitch, and we can confidently take on this stuff right here.
Yeah.
We don't even have to worry about it. Not necessarily just because of what the umpire is calling, but he's not even doing what he's supposed to be doing. That's what concerns me the most with Martin Perez, is that somebody's got something on him, and they don't have to worry about certain things, and he can get pelted here and there.
The other thing, too, at the starting rotation, and there's nothing they can do. Well, I guess there is something they can do about this. When they leave inherited runners on base, yesterday, Dane Dunning, first and second,
it's
2 outs.
It's a disaster.
They both score. The other day, Eovaldi in Boston, he leaves a couple guys on base, and you need your reliever to get out of that situation. They end up scoring. Now, those don't count on the reliever stats, so sometimes you can look at a reliever and go, oh, that's not a bad ERA right there. But inherited runners, it feels like, especially lately, and maybe even throughout the season, but especially lately, if a starting pitcher leaves a runner on base, that guy seems to score. And that's the reliever's main job, is you're coming into a game that my manager doesn't believe the starting pitcher is going to get out of this situation. I believe you are going to get us out of this situation. And if you give up a single and they score the 2 runs and then you get an out, you didn't do your job. I know you got 1 out and no runs on your book, but that wasn't your job. The reason we brought you in is we felt like the starter couldn't get the next guy out, and we believe you can. And so that's
you can't live in this magical land where you're like, we're going to give all our relievers clean innings. And that's never going to work.
And listening to the game yesterday, I wasn't calling the game in Washington. I forget who came in a certain situation for the Nationals, but they were like, hey, out of the last 32 inherited runners he's had, only 1 has scored. That's a good stat.
That is impressive.
When you have an inherited runner, how many times are you giving up the guy that's on base? Because when you come into the game and you're a reliever, and by the way, Washington has a couple guys that could fit in this bullpen for the Texas Rangers. That's your job. Now, you'd have to go back out there the next inning and put up a 0. That's your job too. But man, a reliever's main job at times is you got to bail the starter out of a situation that they're tired and can't get themselves out of.
I think the answer to the original question here, though, Kevin, is that no, it's not good enough right now. Like, for what they want to accomplish ultimately.
And I'm glad that you said that, because then that was going to be my question to go along with it is, what about Seattle? What about Houston? Like, you look at who they're trotting out there, that's the question. Is like, because it could be 2 different things. Hey, I don't know if they belong in the top 10. All right, have that discussion. But to Corey's point, let's say they are in the top 10. Let's say they're 9, 10, or whatever. Right. Well, what if Houston and Seattle are just that much better? Like, what if they're both top 5, top 6? Then maybe that's still not good enough to be in the top 10.
And I think you ask a good question, and I'm listening to it. And I do think Seattle going into the season, I thought it was very even. Now, they lost their best pitcher. The Rangers lost their best pitcher, right? Robbie Ray out for the year. Jacob deGrom out for the year. The other thing, too, is now we're seeing Jacob deGrom hurt the Texas Rangers. You're able to like, oh, gosh, I know he exited the rotation at the end of April, but gosh, look how May went. Look how the first maybe part of June went. But now we're seeing how tough it is to replace Jacob deGrom and how much it is hurting the team that he's not in your rotation. And he's not coming back to help. Now, Robbie Ray ain't coming back to help the Seattle Mariners either. And the Astros have had a couple major injuries too. Garcia and MC dude, McCullers.
Yep.
He ain't coming back to help either.
McCullers.
They're done for the year too. So every team that we think is competing here, and I do think Seattle can still compete. In fact, it's funny. I was watching television this morning, and they were showing the 2011 season of Major League Baseball and how crazy it was. That's obviously the year the Cardinals beat the Texas Rangers in the World Series. The Cardinals were 8.5 back with like 40-something games to go.
Wow.
That's so right now, if you're looking at the standings, you go, oh, Mike, shut up about Seattle. No. They actually just did a whole thing. And the other thing, too, is Atlanta had a huge lead on somebody else, too. It's crazy how we look at it and we go, well, it's a 2-team race. And I get it. It might be. But there's teams that come back from 10 with 2 months to go, being 10 back and 60 games left.
Yeah.
That's enough games to still come back from 10 left. So I wouldn't count out Seattle. Angels, I guess you don't have to count out, but it's going to be tough.
They feel like they're in a lot of
out
trouble.
of the 4 teams, not including Oakland, they have the worst rotation by far. They have the best pitcher, probably, but they have the worst rotation.
By the way, to add to that, end of the season is where you're trying to like, hey, let's just kind of cruise through it here. Let's get to the end of the season. You got 7 out of your last 10 games against Seattle. Like that's 7 of your last 10 games. You have a 4-game homestand against Seattle to close the season out.
Wasn't it 2012? What, the Rangers had like a 6-game lead with 2 weeks to go?
Yeah.
And
it felt
lost
like they had a 6-game lead with 2 games to go. Like, I know that's not the way it happened, but that's what it felt like.
But Mike, here's the thing that like, this isn't Homer. I'm not trying to throw Homer stuff out. You said, and we've said on this show for months now, there will be a lull. There will be a moment in the season where they're going to have to go through adversity. And somebody was like, "Oh, losing Seager's not adversity." It's like, no. When they don't know how to fix what they're trying to fix, and they can't get it to work, what are they going to do? And we're in that moment right now, and that's where the guidance of Bochy and the guidance of Maddox. I think Maddox is doing the best he can with the group he has right now.
And honestly, the break too, right?
Yes, they need the break. They need that, and then they need some more magic from Chris Young, man. Like he's got more work to do with this team, but he knew that before the season even started, and so did we as a fan base.
It is interesting to see like one team that's kind of running through a parallel with the Rangers right now is the Rays. Right. I know they won yesterday, but before that, I think they lost 7 games in a row. And this was the team that before, the last 2 weeks had been the unquestioned best team in baseball all year. Now, clearly, the Braves have gone on a rampage and changed that, but you do see, to y'all's point, all teams will hit that lull. Tampa Bay's in that lull, but more important, so is Texas.
And I think now Chris Young has to ask himself this question we're posing, and we'll pose to the Ranger fans right now. And this is a tough one. Do you believe this is just a lull? And the Rangers are going to play above 500 baseball with this team the rest of the way and the help from their AA and AAA team? Or do you believe, hey, this is maybe closer to what they are with what we have left on our team because of DeGrom being out, because of the bullpen, like Jonathan Hernandez is in the minor leagues because he wasn't able to get the job done. You know, Jose Leclerc, and those 2 guys could bounce back during the season, but Jose Leclerc was considered an 8th and 9th inning guy before the season started, and now he's not that type of guy. So you have to kind of ask yourself, hey, are we going to get out of this lull with these guys, or do I have to add quite a bit to this team? Or, or do I go, this just isn't the team. I never thought this was the year to win 95 to 100 games.
Yeah, the thing I hate about that last part, because you're probably right, is I just hate squandering an opportunity that hasn't been here in a while. Yeah. Like, regardless if you think this team is constructed right now to win 95 games, they're in first place. And they've been terrible for the last 6 years. Like, that means we figure out a way to do something.
But yes, I agree. I hope they figure out how to do something. But for 6 games, 6 weeks, let's say 6 weeks, there was a time when DeGrom pushed Eovaldi back against a different starter. And it pushed every one of those guys against somebody else, as opposed, and so the pairings, the matchups were a little bit different. And you didn't have to rely on a guy that wasn't a good pitcher. Now you're having to rely on, again, the Bradford Perez moment. You could have been like, hey, we're done with that. We don't have to worry about that. But DeGrom being missing, I think, Mike, to your point, it pushes them back to, well, that's what they are with this group of talent.
And I just think about when you brought up the DeGrom thing, it feels like you're still maybe living on a little bit of borrowed time with a few things, specifically like Eovaldi's been awesome. he was supposed to be maybe your second best pitcher. Your stopper is gone. Are you going to count on him to be the stopper all year? I thought you could make it through the season with Martin Perez, especially if you skewed him towards more home starts. Well, that game against Houston was a home start, and it was a freaking disaster.
Yeah.
So I am concerned.
And I do think you have to go after it. You don't trade Evan Carter. You don't immediately trade Wyatt Langford or anything like that. But I do think Eovaldi, Gray, Dunning, Perez, Heaney, those are all older guys. Dunning's the youngest that you have. I believe he's 27 or 28. But the other guys are all 30-something. I mean, this is not when you look at the Atlanta Braves and you go, all right, I mean, Max Fried has been hurt for most of the year. They're their best guy. Spencer Strider's in his second year. The guy Elder's not super old. You start looking at them like, well, there's a reason why they won the World Series a couple years ago, and it looks like they're the favorite to win it now. Again, Acuna's a young guy. Ozzie Albies a young guy. Austin Riley's a young guy. They replace young guys with guys when Dansby Swanson leaves. They're like, that's all right. We got a first-round pick. And he's like, well, they're not ready. Let's just put another guy in there. He's an all-star shortstop. So you just look at this team. This is more of a now team than a future team. I do think the future's bright, but when you look at this rotation and you look at Seager and Simeon, you go, this might be the chance. As much as I want next year to be great and the next year to be great, I'm sure Seattle thought this year was going to be great. So far, it's not great. And so I would push a little bit here, and I would trade some of my prospects to see if 2023 is the magical year of the Texas Rangers. Because if you just push it down the road, to your point, is Eovaldi, is Gray, are they going to be as good as next year? Is Dunning going to be as good this year or next year as he was this year? What are you going to do with Andrew Heaney? Martin Perez probably, just to be honest, at $19 million is probably not going to be on the team next year, but I don't know that. But like all of a sudden you just start looking and Jack Leiter doesn't look like he's ready. Kamar Rocker's not pitching next year. Is Owen White ready? I don't know. Is Cole Winn? He's regressed again. So you can't really count on him to take one of those spots that maybe you were thinking about a year and a half ago. Hey, Cole Winn in 2024 will be one of my guys.